Hello Bloomington, I'm Mayor Tim Busse, and this is the Council Minute for the week of July 14th. At our meeting on Monday night, the City Council took two important steps to continue to move forward the proposed Veterans Memorial here in Bloomington. Some quick background, but my guess is that you know most of this. Bloomington Remembers Veterans is a nonprofit group staffed by an all-volunteer committee of dedicated community members, the majority of whom serve this country as members of the armed forces. Since 2018, they've been working to envision, fund, and ultimately build a Veterans Memorial here in Bloomington that will provide a meaningful, lasting tribute honoring all service members who have served the United States. They've done fantastic work and have made exciting progress on fundraising and the design of the memorial. If you recall, the original site selected was on the Civic Plaza campus just to the east of the building along the pond. Now, when that site was selected, city staff knew that there were underground utilities in the area. As the planning process continued, it became more clear just how risky it was to put a memorial over the top of those utilities. The last thing anyone wanted to see was a mechanical issue with any of those utility lines, which could then result in the disruption of the memorial. In other words, nobody wanted to have to dig up the memorial to fix any problems with the utility lines. So city staff and Bloomington Remembers Veterans started looking at other possible sites, and they didn't have to look far. On Monday night, the council approved the new location for the memorial on the northeast point of the Civic Plaza property where 98th Street and Old Shakopee Road come together. The site was actually one of the original possibilities that were considered, and while it will require a redesign of the memorial to make it work, I think it will be a great location that will provide plenty of room for events like Memorial Day or Veterans Day services, and at the same time be very visible and easily accessible. The other important step the council took on Monday night was to approve a city contribution of $250,000 to help push the project toward the finish line. As I mentioned earlier, Bloomington Remembers Veterans has done a great job of fundraising, with more than $100,000 in donations already received from individuals, Bloomington businesses, and groups like Legion Post 550 and VFW Post 1296. They also received $350,000 in state bonding money from the state of Minnesota. The $250,000 from the city will come from the Strategic Priorities Fund and will be used for site survey and planning work that's necessitated by the move and to help cover construction costs. In my mind, this investment fits perfectly into the city's Bloomington Tomorrow Together strategic plan priority of a connected, welcoming community. These are two big steps in what has been a long process, and Bloomington is closer than it has ever been to having a Veterans Memorial that's fitting for the fourth largest city in the state. And as I'm talking about this, I certainly have to remind everyone that you can be part of this as well. Visit the Bloomington Remembers Veterans website to learn more about how you can volunteer, donate, or add a veteran to the memorial. Also on Monday night, staff brought the council up to speed on a project underway to streamline development approvals in the city. As part of the Planning Commission's 2024 work plan, staff has been looking closely at city codes to identify possible changes that could make the development review and approval process in Bloomington shorter, less expensive, and less onerous. The last time the city looked at streamlining processes was in 2009, so the time is right. Admittedly, this is a lot of deep in the weeds stuff of what goes on at Planning Commission and City Council meetings. Hats off to the Planning Commission and staff. They talked about this extensively at 2 study sessions and came forward with some very thorough and thoughtful recommendations. Cities everywhere are looking at ways to streamline development to increase housing production, ensure economic opportunity, and boost overall community resiliency. Very simply, it's an important best practice. A good example is happening in Rochester, where the city has done some very interesting work with their Unified Development Code. Staff looked at a number of different streamlining possibilities and asked if those changes would reduce time for development approval, reduce costs, increase simplicity, or increase confidence of approval. Those questions can also be considered key goals of this project. If Bloomington's development review processes can meet those goals while not sacrificing the thoroughness and integrity of the review and still protecting public health, safety, and welfare, Bloomington will be a more attractive location for the development and business community. And remember, existing Bloomington residents and businesses are the most common development applicants. In the context of the possible changes, the Council discussed related issues like the workload of both the Council and the Planning Commission, public engagement, and expanding staff approval authority. Staff will take the Council feedback and the Planning Commission recommendations and draft a proposed ordinance on this. The Planning Commission will consider the ordinance at a public hearing in August or September, and it should be in front of the City Council at a public hearing no later than October of this year. And finally, on Monday, the Council had our first in-depth discussion on another topic that's included on the 2024 Planning Commission Work Plan: single-room occupancy housing, or co-living arrangements. These housing types have some unique characteristics and opportunities that could expand housing choice in Bloomington, both in terms of the supply and the variety of housing. Here in Bloomington, co-living isn't even defined in our zoning code, but you could think of it along the lines of a dorm room, a living arrangement where someone rents a room or an apartment within a communal property. There may be shared or individual bathrooms, and there is generally shared kitchen or community space in the facility. And it's important to note that these new developments tend to have much more robust on-site amenities than previous generations of shared housing types. A lot of cities are considering co-living facilities as a potential tool to expand housing variety and increase housing affordability. Hennepin County assembled a task force and issued a report in 2021 related to co-living that included recommendations for cities to consider. Now, specific to Bloomington, there are a few factors to consider as this conversation evolves. The first is that Bloomington residents are the fourth oldest communities in the Twin Cities. 29% of Bloomington residents are 55 years or older. As we all get older and want to stay in Bloomington, it will be important to provide housing options that meet the needs and ranges of affordability that can best serve residents. Co-living arrangements can certainly be more affordable, and in some cases, a co-living environment could help combat the negative health effects of social isolation. Another factor to consider are reuse or conversion opportunities of hotel or office space. The pandemic changed the hotel and office markets in Bloomington, and the city needs to be open-minded about possible reuse of those facilities when those locations make sense. It's worth noting that one project converting hotel space to residential units has already occurred in Bloomington. The Air Apartments at the Crowne Plaza Hotel includes 185 apartments, 44 of which are affordable. The development was done without public financial assistance from the city and has been successful to date. Now, each unit has a kitchen space and a bathroom, so they aren't officially considered co-living facilities, but it's an example of a successful conversion of a hotel space. Anecdotally, while planning staff has recently received some inquiries about office to residential conversion, interest in hotel to residential conversion has diminished, so we'll need to keep an eye on this topic. And finally, there is the issue of greater affordability. Because facilities and other amenities are shared, co-living developments typically are more affordable than other housing types. Our recent development in Columbia Heights that features co-living facilities lists rents that range from $700 to $1,000 per month. No other new construction housing type is going to offer accommodations that are as affordable. As I mentioned, this is the first time the Council has talked in depth about this topic, and there are still a number of questions to be answered. But the Council agreed that it's a conversation worth having. My personal opinion is to move carefully and deliberately on this, and ensure that all questions about livability, health and safety, and appropriateness of use are considered before moving forward. That will do it for this week's Council Minute. Thanks so very much for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe, Bloomington.